We have two guests.
So I'm calling this meeting to order, and
Doesn't have guests, but
and
we all know
and
who they are.
and you are the president, ME. Would you like?
I am. Yes. So, welcome everybody tonight. Welcome Michael and Terry. Both of them, I realize, are guests. Once Mary said, yes, we do have guests. I see them so often, I don't think of them as guests. So, Michael, if you don't know, everyone in here doesn't know you, why don't you go ahead and give us a little short, just a hi, I'm Michael thing.
I'm Michael. I was a member of Straight Talkers, formerly Port Angeles Toastmasters, that disbanded because, well, we just couldn't. This is kind of a bad area for younger people. But been a Toastmaster for many years. Have done quite a few panels with Kyle before in the past. Was a member, held a couple offices in Toastmasters, and then I just have been just really busy to join up with another Toastmasters group, but plan to do that hopefully very soon.
Be great. We'd love to have you. Terry, welcome.
Thank you. This is the first time I've been here. I'm so excited. I'm glad to see Karen too.
So Terry is a member of Squim and Pro Speaking. So,
Well, not pro speaking
oh,
anymore.
not anymore. Okay. Squim. She's with Squim.
I'm still friends with all of them.
Okay.
Come
So,
back anytime.
Laugh Lab Storymasters is a advanced club. We're dedicated to helping people become better storytellers and better humorists, if you will. We provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater confidence and personal growth. And today we're going to be having a panel, and I am going to let Kyle tell you all about that. Kyle, if you sent me
I did not.
a intro, it's okay. I wouldn't have gotten it, so it's okay.
I did send it. I sent it. I sent it. I.
That's funny.
So we strive as Toastmasters, as communicators, as speech makers, we strive to connect with our audience and to keep them engaged in our presentations. We want them to receive value from the talk. Sometimes we don't connect to one or maybe more of the audience members. Sometimes they are less engaged. Sometimes they're bored or rude or even hostile. TI has a exercise. It was in the old manual, legacy manuals. It's in Pathways, level 4, I believe, 3 or 4. Dealing with a difficult audience. I have done this exercise. I did it in the legacy system. I've done it in Pathways. So I've done it 2 or 3 times. And it's not a bad exercise. It's a good introduction to dealing with a disengaged somebody who's in your audience and they're being rude or they're being disengaged or they're being confrontational or whatever. It's good at that. But I will tell you, the exercise has people role playing being rude, and then you have to deal with them. And Toastmaster audiences are notoriously polite. We train our audiences to be polite, and even when they're trying to be rude and confrontational or difficult, they are still notoriously polite. So I thought we needed to step it up a little bit. We needed to look at this, how to deal with difficult audiences in a little deeper, maybe more robust manner. And that's what this panel is about tonight. It's about how do we get in front of audiences that maybe aren't as polite. How do we deal with an audience member whose negative attitude is turned up to 11? How do we deal with that? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And we've got 5 panelists who are going to present to us stories about their experience dealing with difficult audiences, and they're all from different backgrounds. I'm really excited about this. We do have Mary. Would you let Natalie in if you or query her if you want to? Okay. Meanwhile, Cheryl is our timer. So a little bit of business. Cheryl's our timer. Cheryl, would you show us the timing flags?
Let me do that. Okay, first of all, how long are the speeches all the same time, or is it?
No, they are not.
Okay, I don't know how you want to tell me that. Do you want to do that before they all start or right at the beginning when they start?
Okay, so I'll do that right now. Give me 1 second.
I got,
Helen
okay,
is going to be 4 minutes.
okay.
And I know it's going to be 4 minutes because it's a video. It's going to be less than 4 minutes.
Okay,
Karen McNamara has up to 15 minutes. So what do you want, Karen? 13 to 15?
you're,
Karen, 13 to 15 minutes?
Do 11 to 13.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be a little shorter.
Okay. That's
Okay.
fine.
and Terry,
I'm going for 4 to 6.
4 to 6.
Michael?
Michael,
7 to 8.
7 to 8.
Yeah, I think I
And
can
then
remember.
Mary,
8 to 10.
boy, you've given me
Yeah,
every
they're all
kind of
different.
possibility there. Okay, let me show
And
you.
and then
let
we're
me-
going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back for 20 to 25 minutes of Q&A.
Okay, so let me show you my timing. Flags. Okay, so at the very first number, I will be showing you this. Okay. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, that. I'm sorry, my brain hasn't kicked into Toastmaster yet. Okay, so that at if it's 4 to 6 minutes, at 4 minutes would be green. And then this is yellow. And then this is red, and then red will stay up until you finish. So at the end of whatever your timing is, I will put the red flag up and it will stay till you finish. Any questions? Does everything sound okay to everybody? Okay.
Okay.
So that's it.
Thank
And
you.
I'm all ready to time for you.
Now, Lee is not here yet. Lee is supposed to be our general evaluator. Now, let's assume, I mean, he may show up, great, but what I would ask all of you to do is while we are in this process, have a slip of paper nearby and make notes on what you like, what you see that you think is working, what we could do to make this work better, and we'll just give ourselves a round robin evaluation of our panel if Lee's not here to do it. And that way we're prepared and we still get feedback. Let's get on with the panel. Now, our first speaker tonight, she really wanted to be here. She feels strongly about the topic, but she had a conflict. And we met and we were talking about it, and she was like, I can't be there. I said, well, you want to make a little video? Ooh, yeah, okay. So she made a video, and her name is Helen Herr, and she's an immediate past district director. So she's had some experience dealing with Toastmaster audiences at many levels. And I believe she also does a lot of presenting in her home country of China. So I'm going to share her video now. And you should have sound, but if you don't, speak up.
How to handle your difficult audience. Last year, I participated in a trainer program with a key session focusing on how to handle difficult audiences. In this session, the instructor deliberately arranged 4 types of highly challenging audience for practical simulation. The first type was silence. The second type engaged in small talk. The third type raised questions or opposed views, and the fourth type had misunderstandings. To further elaborate the difficulty, each participant was given only 10 minutes to complete a theme presentation while facing various interruptions. When it was my turn, I couldn't help but speed up my pace due to the time pressure, eager to convey the content as soon as possible. However, right at the beginning, two audience members start chatting, forcing me to stop my presentation. I somehow impatiently asked them, "Hey guys, could you share what you talk with us?" They paused, and I continued. Soon afterwards, they start chatting again. I stare at them, but choose to ignore it, fearing that I wouldn't finish in time. I continue with my presentation, and ultimately, its effectiveness was compromised. From this experience, I learned 3 lessons. Firstly, as a trainer or as a speaker, the primary task is to overcome my own impatience and not rush to finish just for the sake of it. Secondly, at the beginning of the presentation, I should clearly state the objectives of the sharing and overall lesson plan, so the audience has a better understanding, which will help with their engagement and cooperations. And thirdly, when facing with interruptions, I should learn to slow down, actively pause, and sincerely address the audience emotions, questions, and underlying needs. All in all, it's not about you, it's about your audience. How to handle a difficult audience.
Whoop, hold on.
Last year, I
It's-
participated in a trainer program with a key session for
I didn't realize the video start over again. I want to ask, did anyone hear anything that they thought was particularly important in Helen's short video?
I appreciated that she said it's not about me, it's about the audience.
Mm-hmm.
There's one way of connecting is to realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually thinking that that's a major thing, because I think a lot of our instinctual reaction to somebody who's being rude or interruptive is to take it personally or think about how it's affecting other people's perception of us, instead of it's about the audience.
I thought that perhaps, given that it is about the audience and not about you, that may be the way to approach someone like that who's chatting so that the others can't hear.
Mm-hmm.
And they might respond to that where they might not respond to me saying, could you take that outside or
Yep.
chat some other time? But, just make a blanket statement that, everyone is here to learn something. So please keep your voices down. Something like that. I don't know.
Mike, I have a feeling you want to say something.
I like the it's about the audience. It is really always about the audience. Whether or not they came to a Toastmaster meeting and wanted to hear your topic, or if they paid you as a speaker, they paid you, so you want to give them everything. And I like that. I like that. That's a really good thing to remember. It's always about the audience.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on. Now, speaker number 2, panelist number 2. Tonight, we are fortunate to have a panelist who is no stranger to challenges of engaging diverse audiences. She's been a Toastmaster since 2005 and has spoken to audiences around the world, whether in person or on Zoom, from the boardroom to the ballroom. In fact, if there's one thing she knows, it's that no two audiences are ever quite the same. But sometimes, just sometimes, it feels like the audience is completely out of alignment. Tonight, she's going to share 2 stories that might sound familiar to any of you or any of us who've tried to command a room, either in person or on Zoom, and found that the vibe was a bit off. From rogue catcalls hijacking Zoom meetings to an in-person crowd that was anywhere but with you, she's seen it. What makes her an expert in handling these situations, though, is that she's not just a speaker. She's more like a chiropractor for group dynamics. She'll share some strategies that didn't work, and she's tried them, and what did work to realign and regain the focus of the audience. Please join me in welcoming Karen McNamara, DTM, who will show us how to adjust our approach when things go out of alignment with our audience. Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Panel Monitor, and welcome everyone tonight. The difficult audience. We've all been there, right? We've all had those days where it just didn't go as we planned, the perfect meeting. Well, this first story I'm going to call Virtual Chaos. A couple of years ago, I was running a virtual training session. I had my slides all ready and polished. I had my coffee brewed and I had my let's go Zoom voice, you know, the smooth, overly upbeat one, like you're doing a game show host, but still wanting to keep people involved. Here's the thing. The moment I started, chaos erupted. Someone forgot to mute themselves. Half didn't have their cameras on. Another was rustling chip bags. And halfway through slide number 2, a cat, a giant tabby named Meatball, leapt onto someone's keyboard. Meatball activated the closed captions, turned on the disco spotlight, and typed all kinds of letters in the chat. Well, I have to admit that was the most engaged the audience was when I began, but not where I was trying to head with my wonderful PowerPoint. So I tried all the wrong things. First, I tried raising my voice, like Zoom respects volume. That didn't work. I tried an awkward pause to see if everybody would kind of do what they were supposed to be doing, and of course they didn't. So then I tried, well, can we all just refocus and start over again? None of it worked. So I thought, how am I going to manage this? How am I going to get like this back in control? How am I going to fix this? Finally, I stopped and I said, okay, I think Meatball hijacked my agenda. Okay, everybody started to hear that. I said, let's do one thing. Let's go to the chat. And I want you to write one thing in that chat that you want to gain from this session. And let's start there. Well, all of a sudden, the people that didn't have a photo were on there. People are going into the chat and writing what they wanted. Everybody was engaged. It was like magic. It was clear. People responded, and the tone completely shifted. I couldn't believe it. And I thought, why was this so powerful? Why did this do it? Well, it comes down to the Zoom isn't always broken. It might just be a little bit out of alignment. And we need to have a host, a co-host as a cat. So what just happened there? Okay. I did a couple of things wrong right up front, and they didn't work. So then I said I had to completely rethink. I had to take advantage of the fact that this cat came in here and got everybody going. So let's pull it in. I tried a little bit of humor and I said, I want my cat as a co-host. I'm changing the agenda. I'm moving it in. And so I brought in the participants. And once again, as was said earlier, it's about the audience, not me. And what did they want? And when they realized they were there for a purpose, everything was clear and it all worked. And it became a very fun Zoom, completely different than what I planned. No PowerPoint was used, but it turned out to be one of the more effective audiences and events that I had. My second story is a workshop that I would say needed a massage. This was an adult live workshop where I was facilitating on communication styles. My audience was a mix of educators, managers, and one guy that looked like he would rather be at the dentist office. So I decided to introduce a simple activity. Easy, right? Wrong. Let's call her Susan. Susan didn't like activities. Susan really didn't like group activities. And Susan wasn't afraid to tell everyone about it very loudly. Why can't we just listen to a lecture? All this interactive stuff feels like touchy-feely kumbaya fluff. We're not in preschool. No, thank you. Not being sure at the time exactly how to handle that, I looked the other way and I tried to ignore her. That didn't work. That made her get louder. So then the room started to get nervous. They started to get quiet. They sat there awkwardly. One guy actually got his chair and started moving it back because he didn't want to get involved in this drama. He could see this imploding. So I'm thinking, all right. So then I thought, okay. I said, how about if we take this offline? And of course, she said, no. So what didn't work? Everything I tried. I initially responded a little bit defensively and tried to ignore her, and that just made her get louder. It made her get more defensive, and it didn't work. Then I thought, well, if I offer her another opportunity to do this talk later on the side, this would be good. But what I did by doing that was give her power to give an answer that I didn't really want. I didn't want her to say no, but I gave her that option. So she took over, and that didn't work. So I had to figure another route. So I tried something else, and this worked better. I acknowledged her discomfort, and then I offered an alternative. So I said, Susan, I get it. I get it that group work and activities aren't for everyone. They're not in everyone's comfort zone. You're welcome, if you'd like to, during this next section, just take notes solo if you want, and just observe. But I didn't want to give a lot of time there, so I quickly then, to bring the audience in, I said, and now for the rest of us kids, here's what we're going to do. I want to see which team can build the tallest tower out of spaghetti and string and tape and have a marshmallow balancing on the top. Well, everybody started laughing. Everybody kind of had that sense of fun. And even Susan gave a little smirk. So why did that work? Why did all of a sudden things change and the group work began? And not only did everybody relax and everybody stay, Susan joined a team. And I think the reason she did that was because I kind of saved her dignity by giving her an option to do whichever way she wanted to do. And I helped then guide the others in a fun way so that it didn't derail things as a group or as a team. So the lesson in this one for me was, if your audience throws you a verbal or a physical elbow, don't elbow a verbal back. Stop, step back, pivot, and then realign to keep your workshop spine nice and straight. But looking at the two scenarios, I would say a couple of things. For the Zoom environment, you want to mute quickly in rough situations to be able to recover faster. In person, you want to set boundaries, but keep your tone light and your feet grounded. And whenever you have the opportunity, try to pack in some humor, humility, and the metaphorical bottle of Motrin. Those are my two stories that for me were ones that I felt gave some examples of both things that go wrong and ways you can maybe turn that to make it go better, because we've all had those moments. We've mentioned a couple of other things. There's also the hecklers that can come in, the know-it-alls, the distracted ones can be there, you know, the ones on their phones, the ones looking like they're taking notes, but they're really not. They're writing notes to other people and doing sideline chatting. Those can all be disruptive as well. The naysayer, the chatterbox, the overly enthusiastic participant, and the ever-present, silent, shouting, nonverbal person who can easily show their disgust, their boredom, their feelings without saying a single word. All of those are ones that can be very challenging for us. So I would offer you a couple of general comments about strategies for handling these difficult audiences. First, I would say stay confident. You come in and you've got the knowledge. You've got something you can give them. You're the expert. You can offer that to them. Don't let them derail that. You just need to shift so they see the value. Your composure sets the tone. Use humor wisely. Use humor so that it can break the tension. I mean, you can do something if people are going off, just something like even taking a marker and say you're doing table topics or something and people are getting off track. Just throw the marker out to someone, have them catch it and say, you're giving the next table topic and then you select who gets it next. What have I done? I've now regrouped the group. I've gotten everybody thinking, oh, they might call on me next. What are they doing? And they're watching. So all of a sudden, if you've got people doing all these extra things, you can quickly shift things. When you do humor, make sure it's self-deprecating or something very light, not something that's going to make the person feel humiliation or any group or stereotype humor. That doesn't help when you're trying to shift or have control of your audience. Engage people actively. This is a fun strategy because I find that when I have someone that has one of these characteristics, they're interrupting all the time, or they have to say something, or they're a know-it-all, those kinds of things. If I can get them engaged in something, then they don't have those behaviors. So for example, someone that's maybe in a Toastmaster meeting, they always have to have the last word or want to say something or always have a comment and you want to hear from others, you can give that person a job. Have them be a timer. Have them be someone that does something and then they're not doing some of those behaviors. So actively engaging them. You can also engage your audience virtually with polls, even in person with polls and ways to get them giving their opinion, having, you know, and you can get a lot of input. The chat can be super useful in that way when you're doing it virtually. And then finally, when you redirect, try to redirect gently and keep it in flow with what your goal is and what you've learned from your audience. With that, I'll turn it back to the Mr. Moderator, Kyle Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So I have to ask you all to please put in the chat a yes or a no. Have you participated in a chat poll before?
In what?
Please put in the chat a yes or a no. Have you participated in a chat poll before? And from this point forward, if you're asked that question, you have to say yes. Karen, you brought up some interesting things, and this is something I wanted to talk about, and I'm not sure whether we're going to talk about it more in the Q&A or whether anyone else is going to address it, but there's some differences between, or some differences in technique and tools for dealing with online versus in person. I mean, one of the things you can do with online people is you can just mute them. And that's a good Zoom master, a good partner, a Zoom master who acts as your partner should be scanning and making sure that people aren't unmuting themselves at the wrong time and finding people who unmute themselves inappropriately and muting them and so forth. And also, of course, turning off screens so that you don't get distracted when somebody walks behind somebody else in their underwear or something like that. We're going to move on because I had another thought and it went right out of my head. Our next presenter, our next panelist is Terry Barrett, who will share with us an example of difficult ones she has dealt with. Terry has worked in the Sequim school system, the Sequim school district, for about 8 years. In that time, she's accumulated some interesting experiences with the difficult ones. Please help me welcome Terry Barrett.
Thank you all. Well, who can you think of that can be more difficult to deal with than a teenager? Really? Over 11 years ago, I moved from Portland up to Sequim and started work at the Sequim School District, which was great for me because I am the parent of 5 children and my youngest child was living with me and he has Down syndrome. And so it made it really nice because the times coordinated with him and his schedule for school, having summers off and things worked out really well. I started out at the elementary school and I worked in a resource room that was kids that had some learning disabilities and special needs. And, sometimes there was some behavior, but for the most part, they were pretty manageable. They were pretty easy to work with. Then I moved to the high school and I started out at the Ag Science building. Well, the interesting thing about that, it was a really fun place to be, big greenhouses to work in and things. And the Ag Science class was the science class that the kids who couldn't pass science anywhere else got put into. So you can imagine the kind of science class that created. Some of the kids were in, the Future Farmers of America and going more in that direction. So they were in that class, but there were other kids that really were not interested in really doing anything for whatever reason. So along the way, there were some interesting things with that. Kids can be pretty darn disrespectful. And the language that has come up, and, I've been out of the school district for a couple of years now, but, and phones, when we were growing up, we didn't have phones in the classroom. They have become a big deal. There has had to be some pretty interesting action taken to manage those phones. The classes that were in that ag science, there was 2 or 3 ag science classes where it was actually a science class, went through a whole program. And then there was also a floral design class, which was really interesting and fun. And there was also another class, a horticulture class in the afternoon that was the end of the day. And so the kids that came out to that class, it was kind of known as an easy class. And there was a lot of hands-on work where you'd be out in the greenhouses transplanting plants, or because the big flower baskets that are put out throughout the summer are actually built at the high school by these kids. They build the baskets, they put the flowers together, and so it's pretty extraordinary. But the kids that are doing it, if about half the kids are interested and about half the kids are just looking for a way to either cause some trouble or get out of class. They'll come up and ask if they can go to the bathroom, and then they never come back. So it was an interesting experience being in there. The thing that I've kind of learned, though, is sometimes the most difficult things we deal with are the things we learn the most and sometimes have the most positive results from. And I've had some of that in my own life personally. So from there, I ended up working with, I moved into the detention room. They didn't call it the detention room, but I was in the room where the kids that were being taken out of class or that had in-school detention, so they couldn't go to classes those days, but they still came to school. They would come to my room. And so I decided, rather than be greeting them at the door with a stern face and telling them to sit down and get your work done and taking charge, I decided I was going to have a little different approach. So I brought in a Keurig machine. I didn't bring any coffee. I brought tea bags and some cups. And when they came in, I offered them a cup of tea and they got to sit down and do their work. And I kept things very cordial. I didn't baby them, but I did make it possible for them to have somebody to talk to. And I did treat them with kindness and firmness. And it went over pretty well. One day, a boy that had never been in that room before was sent to the room, and he came in just fuming. He was so angry and frustrated. He came in and sat down, and I asked him what had happened. He didn't want to talk about it. He just sat down and did his work, but you could just almost see the steam coming out of him. He was so angry. Finally, with a little bit of conversation around, I looked at him and I said, "So what would you do if you could choose how the classroom was run?" And with that, he just erupted with, "You know what I'd do? If I could choose what was happening, this is what I would do." And he went on to express how frustrated he was and what had happened in the classroom that was instigated by the teacher from what he shared. And I did listen very carefully to what he had to share and just let him express that with me. And he got to voice how he thought it could be done differently. And it really changed the whole situation. He calmed down, he felt better. And I didn't take any sides against the teacher. I just listened to him, and things seemed to change. And that room kind of started to get this nice approach. In fact, I think the administration was a little bit uncomfortable with me the way I was doing that. Those kids were supposed to come in there and not feel real comfortable. But I had learned as a parent with my own children that I wanted to be able to know how to parent a little differently than my experience had been. So I had studied Positive Discipline by Jane Nelson, who started this with as a dissertation, working towards her PhD, working with families who had kids with special needs, which I did. And so it really resonated for me. And she explained how kids have the mistaken belief that if they misbehave, they're going to get their needs met. That's why they're misbehaving. She went on to share that there are 4 motivations that this is coming from. The first one would be attention. And I began to identify which ones the motivations were for my kids. And oh my gosh, it helped so much. Motivation. The second one was revenge. If they were feeling hurt, you could see a revenge action coming from them. The other one was power. And the last one was discouragement, to the point where the kids gave up. They didn't even want to try anymore. And I had the wonderful experience of finding out how well this worked with my own daughter, who was a teenager. She was 16. She was having a really emotionally difficult time at the time, and we'd been out to a family event. And so as we were driving back, just the two of us home from that event, she began to tell me how I needed to buy her a car. She wanted a car, she really needed it, and I should buy her one. Her other friends' parents had bought them cars, and I should do the same thing. I said, "Well, I can't do that. I'm not able to buy you a car." And she was so upset about it. And she began to say some pretty mean things that felt like, "Oh, that hurt, revenge." So I could identify that she was coming from hurt. So finally, after she'd said many things, I kept my cool. I learned to not react. And I said to her, "So what are you feeling hurt about?" She said, "I don't even want to talk about it." And she didn't say another word the rest of the way home. When we got home, she walked into the house, went into her bedroom, and went to bed. But in the morning, I was up early and in the kitchen, and here she came into the kitchen and she said, "You know what I'm feeling hurt about?" And she started telling me. And we had one of the best conversations we'd had in a long time. It really opened up that, because we were getting to what the issue really was. And so it was a very positive validation for me that I was on the right track. So I just want to share that, these difficult ones can also be the ones that bring up what we need to learn. And I've been saying for years that my kids are here to teach me as much or more than I'm here to teach them. And boy, has that led me to some really new understandings. And when we grow our awareness and we understand where they're coming from, there's a whole different kind of relationship that starts to build out of that. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Panel Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I was thinking your talking with and listening to the student in the detention reminded me a little bit of something Karen said, because you were talking about you acknowledged the woman's uncomfortableness, Karen, with doing group exercises, and you didn't say tell me more about that, but you acknowledged it and you respected it. And it's amazing, I think, what a little bit of respect, acknowledgement, sometimes listening, treating somebody like a human being as opposed to a problem. It's amazing what that will do. Thank you, Terry. We're going to move on to our fourth panelist. Now, you already know he's from Straight Talkers, formerly the Port Angeles Club. Michael Schmidt's experience with audiences of all types comes from being a stand-up comic for many years and also involvement in several improv troupes over the last 30 years. Always with a deck of cards or a couple of coins, he is a close-up magician that can tell an intriguing story while taking your money. His work in the sales industry has given him experience with difficult clients and skills in dealing with their objections. Currently teaching voice acting for children of all ages, he knows what it is like to have situations that can be difficult to navigate professionally. Please help me welcome Michael Schmidt.
Thank you, Kyle, panel moderator. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My approach to this is a little different because I don't get nice Toastmasters mostly. You don't get nice customers, clients, audience members when you're doing stand-up. But dealing with hecklers is very easy. Don't suck. Thank you very much. Good night. No, seriously, that is the biggest thing. Is just don't suck. Don't give them any reason to try to tear you apart. Sometimes you're in a situation that you just can't handle. And I was hired to do a comic routine for a retirement center. And I said, perfect. Worked with the organizer, tried to get my time. And he goes, you got as much time as you want. Sounds good. So let me give you a brochure that will kind of explain exactly what I'm going to do. So like a great intro in Toastmasters. I wanted them to be prepared of what they were going to get. The audience did not get my flyer. The audience members were mostly 90 and 175 years old. Did not want a funny young smartass to coming in there telling them jokes about computers or anything. They were not the audience. Know your audience. I could have shifted gears, but at that point, forget it, man. I'm going all in. And I left there, drove home 2.5 hours thinking, I don't think I want to do stand-up comedy anymore. And then I went right back to what I was doing at casinos, and I loved it. Most of the time they had a few drinks before, and that was perfect. They got loosened up. They weren't 80 years old getting ready to die. And they were not expecting a comedy routine. They were expecting a lecture on crazy people that are out in the world, not a comedy routine. They were wrong audience. So if you know your audience, you're going to have a better chance. Now, the word heckler is actually rooted in a Dutch verb, which means to irritate or prickle. And hecklers can definitely be irritating. Most of the time, you're going to have two types of hecklers. You're going to have the helper, and we're going to come back to those because those are the mostly. But then you're going to have the drunk, and not just alcoholic, but power hungry. And guys, they're the easiest. There's only one technique. Just let them talk. Just let them talk, because they will hang themselves if you give them enough rope. Because if it's you versus him or her, you can lose. But if it's him versus him or her versus her, you can't lose. They will destroy themselves and the audience will get on your side very, very quickly. Now back to how to not to suck and how to deal with the helpers that want to really help you out, that just really want to give you some advice during your presentation. Be prepared. Know your routine, know your speech, know your presentation. Know it, love it, feel it, live it. And if you spend the time and invest the time in being prepared, you will get huge dividends. Now, in the comic world, you have intensities of hecklers. And I've maybe 1 to 10. And you should have some sort of response for every single one of those levels. It could be just, thank you so much, I appreciate it, to your mom never really taught you that if you don't have anything to say, you're an ass, shut up. Depending on the intensity. And usually the audience will jump right on there because they are there. They're your audience. They're there to hear you, not some heckler. And they want you to destroy them. And if you heckle me, I will destroy you. It depends on how intense I may not light you on fire and roast marshmallows, but I may give you the matches to let you burn yourself up. But I'm not nice. I'm not polite. They're an adult mostly, and they need to be talked to typically like an adult. And if you want to fight, I will fight. But guess what? I won't do it aggressively. I will put a smile on my face and the audience will gently come over to me and they're on my side. They're typically to listen to you. So they're already on your side. And they feel the uncomfortability that you don't because you are prepared. Now, there are some techniques that you can use. And we use this technique. You already use this technique when you're doing table topics. Repeat what they said. Sometimes it's so stupid. Most of your audience, if you have a microphone, most of the audience doesn't hear this stupid remark, this inappropriate, stupid remark. Repeat it verbally, word for word. And mostly that's enough to make that person look so stupid that everyone around him is saying, shut up, shut up. Their wife, their spouse may just cover their mouth. And if they really get out of hand, just say security and they'll take care of it. But the main thing about it is just hear them out. Hear them out and calmly acknowledge them. You don't have to validate them. You don't have to agree with them. But sometimes just being heard is enough to shut them down. Now, you can engage them with humor. Having 1 to 10 responses, depending on the intensity, is really good. But guys, sometimes that response will just flow out of you naturally because of what they said. I had somebody said something like, pluck your eyebrows. And I said, well, maybe I should go with the streetwalker look like you do because it looks like it appears to be working for you. And that was enough to shut them. They were like, oh my God, did I insult them? They insulted me first. They started the war and I'm about to finish it. Redirect their energy. Now, how do you redirect their energy? One of the best ways to do it is just to smile and say nothing, but just stare directly into their eyes. And everyone else is going to turn and look at them too. And what is the biggest fear in everybody's mind? Public speaking. What did you say? You're not gonna, now all the eyes are on them. They're not just some silent ninja behind the keyboard throwing these comments at you. Now they are in the center of attention and they'll be crushed. Now, ask them to repeat what they said. You can deal with them with a little sarcasm as well. You can berate them, you can yell at them, you can comment on their mom or whatever you want. But most of that time, it's just going to fuel it. It's just going to fuel that's what they may want. However, there's 3 techniques that you can use. Remain calm. Just remain calm. Just, man, dude, that's a great one. My mom's been dead for 5 years, so your comments are really irrelevant. But thank you. I got to use that. Can I use that? That's hilarious. Congratulations. And then just make them look stupid. But remain calm. Don't go aggressive. Don't, because you will lose. Maintain your focus. You know what you're doing. Maintain your focus. Don't let them get under your skin, because once they do that, they've won. And totally project your confidence. You may have to go and hit them verbally, but maintain your confidence, and your audience will back you. Now, always remember, you have the mic. You have the control, but there's never no 100% way to break a heckler. But there are a few comebacks, and I'm going to give you these, and I've used these. Doesn't matter what they said. I just say, you know what? That is a great inquiry. Let's save that for the Q&A section at the end of the session. Okay, good. Let's move on. Now, I'm not sure I totally agree with you, but I do appreciate your public outburst of stupidity. And then the audience will laugh, and they will be like, oh, this guy's coming at me. I'm done. This isn't television. I can hear you. Usually stops them in a live. No way. And my favorite one that Bill Thomas taught me is, I couldn't disagree with you less. So remember, heckle comes from that old Dutch verb. You can also say, ma'am, nobody wants to prickle you. And it will go right over their head. So you are going to, at some time, get a heckler. And I hope and I pray that you never have bad hecklers, unless you want to do stand-up, and then you deserve it. But prepare yourself. Have those comebacks. You can use as harsh as language as you want. Sometimes I have used it, but it fueled. Don't degrade yourself to their level of profanity, because you will lose. Unless that's how you talk all the time, and that's the kind of comic you are, then they're going to be used to you dropping a few F-bombs on them. But you can destroy them with the little pistol shots. You don't need a AK-47. You just need a little pea shooter. Just pop them once. Just one little pop, a little swan on the butt, like you do with your kids. And you can recorrect their behavior, because they're going to know that you are confident and you're smiling and they're not getting to you. You won, and they will yield. So hopefully that helps. Back to you, Mr. Panel Moderator.
Thank you, Michael, and I'm glad to see the assertiveness training is paying off and you're finally coming out of your shell. Now, where's my paperwork? You know, we commented a little on Helen's and a little bit on Terry and Karen's. Anyone want to make a comment on Michael's presentation? Something you learned?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm unmuted, aren't I?
Hey,
I was
yes,
taking
you're unmuted.
copious notes. I mean, having a response for each. Don't suck, first of all. I love that's the best one.
Short to the point.
The 2 different kinds of hecklers, the helper and the drunk, whether alcohol or power. I would feel a lot more comfortable, I think, managing a heckler as a result of what you've shared with us. So thank you. Awesome.
Anyone else?
I really liked I forget just how you said it, but just don't let them get to you. Don't lose your cool, because a lot of times that's really what it takes, isn't it? It's just, you're not losing your own composure to let them get to you.
I particularly liked the uh, repeat it back to them.
Mm.
Let everybody hear how stupid he really is. And then I liked the comment about thank you for illustrating your stupidity. Yeah, I like that. So I can't see myself being in a position where this happens to me, but you just never know. It's nice to have a few little arrows in the quiver there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say the same thing, Emmy. You and I, our brains must be connected, because I was thinking the same thing about repeat what they said. But I also like the one, know your audience. Now, and sometimes we don't know our audience because we don't know where, it's like a regular Toastmasters meeting, but a lot of times you can figure out know your audience depending on where you're speaking at. If you're going to a convention, or you're going to a medical, whatever you're doing, you would at least kind of know your audience. And so I like that too. And then one thing, and I wrote it down, but I don't know. I think it was maintain your focus and project confidence. That works for me when I do that. If something goes wrong, if I just project confidence, they overlook everything, and somehow it gets us back on track, because confidence can scare a person into listening and not, doing something. So, but it was great. Thank you.
Okay. We are going to move on to our fifth and last panelist. Our final panelist, Mary Morrison, has more than 40 years experience in facilitating meetings. She discovered that managing difficult audiences can mean managing herself. Please help me welcome Mary Morrison, who is just too polite.
I had just finished facilitating a training session, and I was so frustrated with one of the participants who went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And when we took a break, I turned to my mentor and said, I'm so frustrated. And my mentor said, you are just too polite. What do you mean? Well, you stand up there with this smile on your face, and it's really obvious you're really frustrated, but you don't say anything. And if you don't say anything, who can? The greatest lesson I think I learned in facilitating any kind of group was when I was that person standing up front. No one else had the authority to tell someone else in a very polite way, just shut up. It's not your turn anymore. And if I was going to be just too polite, my facilitation career was going to be over pretty quickly. It was a great gift, because it wasn't the first time I'd actually heard that, but this time I really heard it. I have about 5 scenarios I want to share with you tonight, and I've just described one. The constant commenter, the person who has no boundaries about the time limit that they are speaking. And they might speak on everything. And if you're the person in charge of that room or facilitating that particular meeting, you're the only one who can stop that. So a couple of things I've learned on how to make that happen. One, be more direct. Because for the most part, I have found that they're really clueless about their own behavior. They truly don't intend to dominate, but they get on a roll and they're so excited that they just go on and on. So I stop them and say things like, I just need to interrupt you now. We need to move on. Thanks for your comments. I'm going to take one more from somebody else. There's lots of different ways you can do it, but be direct. If you find this person is chronic, which I have been part of a group that meets monthly, and we have one person that does like to kind of hijack the meeting. She'll make a comment on everything.
I'm sorry, I'll try to stop.
So once I met with her and said, in between meetings, I have a problem. You are a problem solver. I know you are a problem solver because at meetings, it's clear to me that you like to provide your perspective on almost everything we're talking about. My problem is I run out of time at meetings. And you know we run out of time because almost always I have to cut someone off. Help me solve this problem. It was miraculous. Not only did it help my meeting, but I've had 2 or 3 other people approach me and say, did you have a chat with her? Because I've really noticed a difference in her behavior at our meetings. I said, yeah, a miracle. And I didn't have to say anything to her directly. She understood, she got it, she was my helper. She is my helper. She truly comes from a place of being a problem solver. But she also recognized there were other people who may want to be engaged in the conversation. I loved it. I love her now. She manages herself. That's the constant commenter. Then there's the smartest one in the room, or AKA, I like to call this person, has the oldest child syndrome. Any of you here the oldest child in your family? If you are, no, I'm not meaning to say that this is again, it's a helper syndrome. I am second oldest of 9 kids. My parents relied on the oldest ones for wonderfully great help. They needed us to step up, but that can sometimes bite you because you know the best way to do everything when you're the oldest child. Again, comes from a place of great helper. I want to be, I've had these responsibilities my entire life. How can I not help? You have to be able to declare your independence from the smartest one in the room or the oldest child syndrome, person who raises their hand, who assumes that they know the best, they know the way. I personally respond to them by thanking them the first time, maybe even the second time, and then making sure I set up just an expectation in the moment. I want to hear from a lot of people. There's a lot of wisdom in this entire room. Who haven't I heard from yet? So simple phrasing like that helps them manage their own time. So the burden's off me, helps them manage their own time, and it's an invitation to other people to, one, realize that I do want to hear from other people, and I don't just want to hear from that one person. I will have an expectation from the rest of the room that they also have wisdom that we need. So that was first one, constant commenter. Second one, the oldest child syndrome, or the smartest one in the room. My third one is a predatory listener. Is that the first time you've heard that phrase, predatory listener? But you probably know exactly who I'm talking about, don't you? A predatory listener. This came up a lot. I spent for the last 5 years of my career working in DEI, but probably wouldn't have a job if I hadn't retired at this point in life. But I spent a lot of time helping my 3,600 coworkers understand why it was important that we listen to the whole of our community and understand the diversity of our community. And they didn't all think like the engineer that they might be, or the planner that they might be. Whatever their field of expertise was, that wasn't what our entire community was made up of. And there were really, in fact, people who were very nervous to interact with public officials. So the predatory listener is the person in the room who raises their hand, pretends that they're asking a question, but what they're really doing is making a comment that tries to trap you, right? They can be almost impossible to answer because they don't have an open mind to hear what you're saying. They have removed the possibility that there is something of value that you're trying to add. My greatest tip in managing predatory listeners is honestly, have help to back you up. Now, I say that because they will often draw their attention so deeply to you that you do lose your confidence. If you have help, you can ask that backup person to come forward, and they're not completely involved in it. Especially works, again, this was doing a lot of equity work. If I'm white female and it was a white man challenging me, my help was going to come from another white man. If it was someone of color challenging me, my help was going to come from a co-facilitator I might have that might have been a black man or an Asian woman, but it wasn't going to be me. You always counteract with someone else. Typically, you want to mirror whoever it is that's challenging you. Hopefully, it's that same demographic, but if it can't be, at least it's not going to be you. You're already the target. The interrupter, we've heard a couple of people tonight talk about the interrupters. I'll just be brief on this one. I wasn't finished yet. Just be direct. There's no room for being just too polite with someone who interrupts. They've been an interrupter probably their whole life. Just be direct. I wasn't finished yet. There'll come a time for that later. If you really need to make this comment, here's a comment card. Lots of this is done by design. If you design the meetings or you have a plan as a trainer, you can design things and you design in. There will be, love that Michael said, there will be time for the Q&A later. Knowing there's probably not, but it deflects that a little bit. And then my final difficult audience is the angry mob. And you might have seen this at public meetings. There are people who believe that they have this right to do this or say this. One of the ways to handle an angry mob is just take a break. Tensions are too high, people are very emotional, you can acknowledge them, but they start ganging up on you, and suddenly you've got too many people coming at you, and they're clearly not listening. They're clearly not interested in you sharing any of the information that you might have, or even you knowing that you acknowledge them. That's not their point anymore. Take a break can really help. Diffuses the situation, the anger. Give them a time limit to speak. Do a pro and con. Set up the meeting in advance so you can tell them, we're going to take a pro on this, we're going to take a con on this, we're going to go back and forth. So you don't allow the mob to form, because mobs can get kind of brainless. So those are 5. Constant commenter, oldest child syndrome, the predatory listener, the interrupter, and the angry mob. Lots of tips and clues. I have learned, though, one thing. I can be very polite. I don't have to be too polite anymore because I worry that I am insulting someone. No. Now I have the confidence to be just polite enough. Back to you, Kyle.
Thank you, Mary, and I hope you'll forgive my little interruption there. It is 7:41. I think we're more or less on time. I need to actually check the agenda, but we're going to take a 5-minute break. Back to order because I have unpaused the recording. We're a little behind schedule, but it's not a problem. We are going to move into the Q&A portion of our meeting. We do not have a host of audience members to ask questions of us, so we must ask questions of ourselves. And I'm going to poke at something. I'm going to ask the first question, if I may. I sat and I read through the text and I watched the video for the Toastmasters exercise, how to deal with difficult audience. And one of the things they mentioned is staying professional. And Helen mentioned staying professional. And my question is, what does that mean? What does it mean to stay professional? And I invite all of our participants today, not just our panelists, to share their opinion on what does it mean to stay professional.
I would like to say just quickly, since I wasn't a panelist, that Michael's definition is very different. But at the same time, I took a lot of good information from what he said. But, speaking in church is not the same as stand-up comedy. So, yeah, but I really appreciated a lot of his comments, even though I couldn't apply them myself. So.
I would say stay professional also means not getting emotionally caught up in it, staying away from reacting.
Okay. So calm. Michael said calm. Several other people said calm, and a little bit of emotional distance.
I think it's avoiding, it is calm, but it's like avoiding getting defensive too. It's remaining like you have this information to share, or you've got this point you're making.
Yeah.
And letting, if you get rattled by someone who's challenging it, that would be the opposite of being professional.
Okay. Okay.
I would agree with all those comments. I think that it came up with every single panelist that self-control, staying calm,
Mm-hmm.
showing your expertise was all important, regardless of what scenario we were addressing, whether it was comedy, whether it was classroom, whether it was video, every single one of them, we're supposed to be in control, remain calm, and not engage in the negativity, not engage in what they're doing. And that then gives you the professional expert persona and allows you to maintain control.
Sure.
I think we all said it in different ways, but that piece, when I was noting down the positives, every single person said something related to that.
Cheryl, you had a comment? You're muted. Okay. You're shaking your head.
No, I didn't. Thank you for asking anyway.
Okay. I want to make a comment on something that Emmy just said, because as she pointed out, speaking in front of a church is very different from doing stand-up comedy. So is when you are giving a seminar where you're trying to present information, or leading a DEI, facilitating a DEI workshop or something like that. They have slightly different goals, and I want to point out the difference, because Toastmasters says there's 4 reasons to speak. There's to inform, to inspire, to persuade, and to entertain. Now, it seems to me, we've talked about you have to stay focused. You have to stay focused on what you're there for. To inform, to inspire, to persuade, or to entertain. Now, Michael can use techniques that we wouldn't use because he's there to entertain. And if the audience leaves entertained, even if it's at the expense of the person who's interrupting him, that's okay. That's an okay solution. Whereas if Mary completely humiliates one of the participants in front of the audience, that's probably not so okay.
I tried it, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Didn't work out well for me.
You tried using the Don Rickles heckler approach. Shut up, hockey pucker.
I get no respect.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Okay. Thank you for answering my question about what it means to stay professional.
But Kyle, well, maybe this is what where you were going to go with this, what you asked the next one, which is get the point about knowing your audience.
Mm-hmm.
What all of our things, what all of our presentations had in common was the better you can know your audience, the more successful you can be at any of this. So if people are coming to be entertained, then do a good job getting your act together in advance so that you don't suck. If in my case, I would say most of the mistakes that I made facilitating about DEI, I didn't think deeply enough or know my audience well enough to understand the kind of resistance that I would face.
Mm.
And if I had done that better, I would have been way more prepared for the amount of people who said I had no place, no business being there,
Mm.
or who were in complete denial about any amount of race. It didn't matter how much evidence of racism we gave them or bigotry that we could share. They were in complete denial about it. If I had known my audience and the kinds of reactions, I would have shared different information with them and managed it better from the beginning.
Mm.
And I think there's a lot of ways you can collect that information. It can be online. It can be through other people that have presented. It can be through the coordinator. One of my favorite things to do if I'm going to a conference or something like that where I'm speaking, I like to be there early and wander around.
Yeah.
And just listen. Listen to what are they frustrated about? What's their push point? What do they want? Because if you can come out, say everybody is complaining about the traffic in the waiting area before the conference begins. When I begin my talk, I'm going to begin with something about traffic. I'm going to say, I can't believe how long I sat in traffic getting here, because I already know I have a bunch of people in the audience that are frustrated about that too. So I've already got them with me, and then it can help other people join. So knowing your audience, I just think is critical whenever you can do it. I mean, there are occasions where we're thrown in and we have not a clue what we're dealing with. And that does happen too. And then you just have to punt as it makes sense. But yeah.
How does our response to a difficult audience or a difficult audience member change based on in-person versus hybrid versus online only?
It's nice. It's easy, in fact, to enlist the Zoom master ahead of time. If I stop, somebody starts bugging me, make sure that they're muted. That's probably the quickest and easiest way to handle some of this. But so that to my mind, is one of the biggest difference about online. And then there's the Zoom bomber.
And then there's the what?
The Zoom bomber.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's not something usually the presenter is going to be dealing with.
Right.
Although you may have to deal with the after effects of a Zoom bomber. And it's probably not going to be that different from the cat.
Well, Kyle, I think you should share your story because I think about this a lot. Your story of when you had to go teach a class to a Zoom group about humor and share that story, because to me, that's like, when I think about a difficult audience, that is like the worst. I mean, shoot me right now. I think you should share that story.
Well, okay. I was invited to go to speak at the NVIDIA Toastmasters Club. And they made the invitation open to the company. So they had something like 200 people who signed up to come to this presentation. I was going to be presenting on using humor in the workplace. half an hour to 45 minutes about using humor in the workplace. And of course, I'd worked on it so that I had humor in the talk on using humor in the workplace. And I think this is probably one of the most difficult audiences I've ever dealt with, because they had an auditorium that a meeting room that you could probably fit 60, 80 people in, and only 2 people were in it. The person who scheduled it and their partner or whatever. And the camera in that room showed the back of their heads and the screen with me on it. And it is NVIDIA's culture, corporate culture, from when from before COVID, when they would get online in meetings and they didn't have the bandwidth for everyone to have their screen on. It was their corporate culture that if you're not speaking, you have your screen off. You're not just muted, it's off. So I proceeded to give a 45-minute humorous talk to 200 people who I could not see. The only thing I could see was the back of 2 people's heads. Couldn't hear anything, had no audio feedback, had no visual feedback. I don't know if they were smiling. I don't know if they were texting. I don't know. I have no clue. 45 minutes of nothing. And that was, for me, one of the hardest things I ever had to do. Now, in this case, it was just persisting. I just had to persist, try to offer them what I could, get through it. So I didn't have to like, yeah, you're out of here or anything like that. But
That would just be awful.
yeah, that was
It
painful.
would just be awful
Yeah.
because you have not a clue how effective you're going to be. Did you ever get any feedback afterward?
No.
Oh,
No.
man.
No.
I hope you never do it again.
I did have a survey, which I put in the chat so that people could click on it and fill out a survey, and nothing.
Who invited you to that?
Abhijit.
And he didn't give you any feedback?
Well, I would have to check. He might have come back after the fact and filled it out. You know, the link was live for a while, but you know, after 2 or 3 days, I didn't have any feedback. So,
It's
and the thing is,
interesting.
what that taught me, I mean, that talk about knowing your audience. It never occurred to me to ask about their corporate culture around having their screens on.
Yeah.
And now, when I'm speaking to a small group of people and I'm doing something that involves humor, I will actually encourage them. Hey, everybody, don't mute yourself. That way, I get some auditory feedback, even over Zoom, as to whether I'm connecting or not.
I attend one group that the culture is set up front very clearly that it's 1 hour of your time. You come, we start right on time. If you're not there, you don't get to enter. And we end right on time, and everyone must have their screen on the entire time and be open when we say to open mics, you're open. And if somebody doesn't follow those rules, they're kicked out. And the first time I saw it, I was like, whoa, that's really harsh. But then I thought, you know, it's just a norm for that group. And it was the expectation. And they said, you know, if you're gonna have this hour, you can have your screen on.
Yep.
And if you can't, if you feel you're not presentable, then don't come the next time.
Right.
And then you're there, you're present and you're there. And there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, most groups are not that directed, but I get it. You know, so it's a strategy.
Okay. I have another question, and it's related to using speaking online. Is comments in the chat disruptive?
Not to me, because I don't look at them until after I'm done.
Okay. Okay. Michael?
If I'm using a chat,
Yeah.
I will have somebody else that is watching that. If I'm the presenter, And then they can track that. And then I don't get off focus, but that person can then manage it. And then if there's a time where I don't want the chat, then I have them turn it off. So I have control of when people are doing it, and then it doesn't become disruptive. That's what I found worked for me.
Okay. Michael, you had a comment?
Yeah, I teach a lot of young kids online, sometimes up to 9 students, and I have multiple screens currently. So my chat box is over there, full screen. So I can, out of the corner of my eye, I can see movement. And I looked over there, and one student was literally doing this. This is his chat. I had 745 Z's in it.
Oh.
Was it frustrating? Yeah. And I just let him go. And then I just turned off the chat. I just turned off the chat. And sometimes there will be some conversation between 2 of the students that aren't in the scene. And that's perfectly fine. Most of the kids, they know that they have to be well behaved. They know the rules. And every once in a while the conversation goes in there, and I have to address that, because I think the conversation is really, really important. I said, you guys, that little conversation about the Minecraft movie or this video game, I said, let's explore that and tell me your thoughts about that, because I'm getting them to speak, doing table topics. And the classes are not just to be really good voiceover actors, but it's all mainly wrapped around what we believe in Toastmasters is you got to be a really good communicator, or to really go in any job that you have. You need to be a great communicator, and the better communicator you are, the further you're going to advance. And I kind of like the chat. I've used it over here, and I can see what's going on over there. And sometimes I bring it right in, and in the blank spot of my screen, that's where I have it. So I can look down, and I can look around the room. I can look at the camera, and most of the time I'm sharing screen with the script on this. So we're all little tiny screens, and it's really nice because I can have that chat box right there. Yep. So that I can monitor it. So I'm making sure that no one's berating anybody else, that they're not picking on anybody, that they're not having inappropriate conversations or whatever it happens to be. And I've only had to turn off chat in 2 of my classes. And I know that one of the kids has a little, he's on spectrums. Let me just put that on it. Okay. And so that's his excuse for profanity. And I said, the rules, we'll do private one-on-one classes, and then I don't really care. I really don't care. But the chat, if you monitor it right, and if you have someone that, while you're doing a presentation, that is monitoring that chat, like that helps. But I can mute, I can turn off as a host, I can turn off their camera, which I've had to do because parents were walking in the background before getting dressed. I've been in a Zoom meeting during the presentator, and her husband walked by in his underwear, and he's making a snack, and she didn't even realize it because she's totally focused on it. And I'm just kind of like, yeehaw. Yeah. And I had to make the comment, "What's for snack?" But Kyle, I feel your pain with that. I have one class, and it's specifically called Mike's Camera Action. I want to see the body language of them doing it. I want to see what they're doing with their hands and their face, and if they're smiling, if they're angry, and what they're doing, because voiceover acting is not just a great voice, but it's body language. Robin Williams was a master at it. Robin Williams probably broke more microphones and earphones than anybody else. Maybe Jim Carrey a close second, but it's that body language. And this girl comes in, her camera's on. Hi, I have them brag about what they're doing, get them talking extemporaneously, right? Table topics, all back into improving, just releasing some of the anxiety if they're having a bad day. And then she starts to read, and her camera is off every single time because she doesn't like to act in front of the camera. Even though the class is Mike's Camera Action, she will not have her camera on. And so another girl came in, and because I wasn't hard on her and telling her to do the camera, I was trying to be nice. I was trying to be the nice guy. The other girl, she turned her camera off.
You're too polite, Mike.
And I was just like, guys, do you know the name of the class? Yeah. What's the name of the class? voiceover acting. No, it's Mike's camera action. You got to have your camera on. And because of the platform that I teach on, it's mandatory that they have their camera on unless they get pre-approval. And some of the students aren't pre-approved, but they also don't have a camera. So I have to immediately send a message to out school support and safety saying this kid doesn't have a camera. Can you address it? And then they are the bad people and I'm going to be nice again. And so, yeah, you really have to watch the audience because the kids, I couldn't address their heckling the same way that I would do somebody that was at a stand-up comedy routine.
Of course.
If I was doing a presentation, and I am a very clean comic, and the biggest reason I got out of comedy was it was just I needed a shower after getting done with, especially if there was if it was like a smorgasbord, multiple comics, and we all had, and it was horrible. It was horrible. It was just most of the time you're in casinos or bars, and there are lots of drinking, a lot of smoke, and it was just a bad environment. But I will tell you, because I was a clean comic, I was sitting with 4 guys at the table, and there was 5 of us that presented, and I was number 5 because I picked the wrong card. So I had to go after these. They were way better, but they were vulgar and they used a lot of profanity, and I didn't. And at the end of the show, a guy came over and said, "Do you do corporate comedy?" And of course, those guys are all, "Oh, hell yeah, man. Yeah, well, we could do, yeah, hell yeah, right?" And they're drinking, and I'm not because I'm going to drive. And it goes, "No, you." And they all looked at me like, "What?" And he goes, I like your style because it was corporate comedy. Now, I could have dropped a few F-bombs pretty easy. I could have used some a little bit harder language. It wouldn't have been too hard. I worked in roofing. I got that language. I speak sailor with a roofer dialect, but because I just did not I held my standards of what I wanted to do. He offered me a really very, very lucrative opportunity to come and speak to his corporation. And it was 5 digits because he asked me what I usually charged for a corporate event. And I told him $50,000. And he went, and all the comics choked on their drinks and their olives and lemons were flying. And he goes, "Oh, we don't have $50,000 to hire you." And I said, "What's your budget?"
Yeah.
He said, "We could probably do 15." I said, "Perfect." I would have done it for 500. And the art of negotiation from Bill Thomas, tell them how much you're worth. And then if they say, "Oh, we can't do that," how much is your budget?
Yeah.
I can do that. And I prepared an hour for their corporation. I knew who the jerks were. I knew who the nerds were, the butt kissers. I knew all that. And I knew the weaknesses of the vice president. So I could pick on them a little bit and some of their habits. And and I knew the audience. And then COVID hit. And they pretty much I would say maybe about half of their employees, they just let them go. And the other half were working at home and they didn't have the convention. And they basically just gave them all money. And now I got my down payment for that, which I always said I want half up front and then half at the end in a check or a suitcase of money, whatever it happens to be. And I tell you what, sending back half of that money was the hardest thing. But it happens. Sometimes it happens. But it was a great example of keeping that line of how far you go. And I will only go so far, even if the person is really bad.
So I want to. I've been asking most of the questions so far. Does somebody here have a question that they want to ask? Something you've been thinking about?
One thing that I notice is that we all are coming from a variety of purposes, just like you talked about the 4 reasons for a speech. And so I guess I could just say, how does that encourage how you focus what you're presenting and how you manage that, manage the feedback that's coming, what you're
Okay.
trying to accomplish
So,
with.
so let me see if I understand your question. Let's assume you're trying to persuade or motivate or inspire, because entertaining is a different animal. Let's assume you're trying to do one of those three. Is your question, how does that purpose affect how you focus
Yeah,
on
and
delivering it?
right.
Okay. Anyone want to take a crack at that? I mean, I can talk about how I would do it, but I'm not a panelist. Any other panelists want to take a crack at it?
All I could think of when people were talking about their varied experiences was, oh, I'm so glad that wasn't me. Right? What would I do with a room full of teenagers? So, I mean, clearly we've all adapted to know the audience that we work with most.
Uh-huh.
I was probably trying to both inform and persuade people because there were actions we wanted them to take. I was not trying to inspire them. I was
Right.
not trying to entertain them, but we did make things very interactive.
Yep.
But I wasn't even training. This was just like, here, you got to know this basic information about our community. So
Yep.
it was really probably inform, persuade.
Sure. Sure. When I think about, matter of fact, yesterday I was talking with a person about how to write a speech. And the way I write a speech is identify what is my one goal for this speech, and then what is the one point I need to leave with the audience to create that goal, and that one point becomes my close, usually verbatim. And the opening and the close are the two parts of a speech I'm guaranteed to write out verbatim. Everything else I may or may not write out verbatim, but the close definitely do, because I need to know where I'm going. You know, if you're going to plan a trip, the first thing you do is decide where you're going, and that's the close. And so I use that to refocus. If something comes up and pulls me off target, I come right back onto where am I going? And I have to take a detour down here to deal with this. Where am I come back. Where am I going? So having that clarity of the close I'm heading towards helps me deal with it.
Okay.
Does anybody else have a question? Not seeing one, I want to tell you a quick story that I heard from a professional speaker. I apologize, I can't for the life of me remember who it was. But he was a professional speaker, and he was hired by a guy to come in and speak to, he was hired by a corporate owner to come in and speak to the employees. And they told him, you know, what the topic was and it fit him and whatnot. And he started presenting and he started watching people's body language, and they were frowning, and then they were sitting like this. And, you know, I think this was before cell phones. So they weren't pulling out cell phones looking at them, but they were getting fidgety, and they were closed down. And he was trying to engage the group. He was trying not to suck. He was trying to engage the group. And finally he just said, I need to check on this. This is what I'm seeing. I am seeing people with arms crossed and frowning, and it looks like you're not it looks like you don't want to be here, like you're not engaged in this topic. What's going on? And finally somebody raised their hand and said, well, we were told the topic you were here to talk about this, which was completely different from what he had been told to talk about. He was told to talk about A. The audience was told he was coming to talk about B.
Mm.
And so what he did is he said, oh, well, I don't have a prepared speech on B, but let's discuss it and maybe I can add some value. And he proceeded to have a discussion with the audience and shared whatever expertise he had in that particular area and provided value to the audience. And the couple of things that come to my mind about that is he listened to his gut. He listened to what he was seeing. He finally acknowledged it, and he focused on the needs of the audience versus his needs, or even the guy who's writing the checks needs. And I took a lot out of that. So I started out today talking about, we want to connect with our audience. We want to engage our audience. We want to not suck. And sometimes it doesn't happen as completely as we want. But we've talked about a host of techniques that can help us deal with that person or persons who are disengaged, unconnected, possibly rude, potentially hostile. Staying calm, staying professional. Remembering it's not about you, it's about the audience. Holding on to our precious confidence. Engaging with humor. Actively engaging with the person who's causing the problem. Listening, acknowledging, and being more direct. Those are some, and being patient too. Those are some of the comments I heard. If we will practice these things, if we'll keep them in mind, then we can be more effective in dealing with the audiences and the interruptions and the mayhem, and we can deliver the value that we hope to deliver to our audiences. And with that, I am going to ask Mary, would you be willing to facilitate a round robin evaluation?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we'll do it this way. I'm gonna assume I have at least 8 minutes. And so I'm going to give each of us anywhere from close to a minute to share your comments about today's meeting, the communication, any aspect of the meeting that would help Laugh Lab Storymasters improve. I'm going to start with Michael and go to Karen.
Oh, I am unmuted.
Yes, you are.
I got several buttons that I can mute myself, but I really like the video presentation. I really enjoyed that. I usually don't ever see that. Typically, I haven't been to a Toastmaster meeting for quite a while, but I never seen something like that. And that was kind of nice. I like that. Karen, you always are a great storyteller. I can always listen to your storyteller. That was really, really nice. I like that you shared two separate stories, but you weave them together. And I like that. That was just right in your wheelhouse to combine everything. And I liked how everything was wrapped up in a really good, just a nice package. So thank you for that. And I will pass it on as well.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Karen and then Terry.
What I loved was that all of the panel members have experience in very different ways around classroom management and audience disruption. And so we got some common themes, but we also got some very different perspectives based on whether you're doing stand-up comedy, whether you're doing a classroom, whether you're doing adult class, whether you're doing online or Toastmasters, and we got tools for each one of those. And I loved that. And I pulled away the comments that we said before around knowing your audience and staying calm as some of the two key things there. And Terry, I loved your comments about the teenage and the challenge of schools and classrooms. That was really helpful to me. I do a lot of work with principals and superintendents and classroom management, and some of the things you spoke to really resonated with me because I hear you. They are a hard group, and there's some interesting strategies related to that. So it'll be fun to talk more later. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Karen. So Terry and then Emmy.
I would love to talk with you more too, Karen. I really enjoyed being here. It was really nice to get to be here for the first time because I've heard about this club for a long time with Kyle and with Emmy. And so it's fun to get to be here. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of, as much as it was really interesting to hear all the different expressions and different time frames and so stories and things like that. There was a lot of variety to it, which was really interesting. But I also really liked the environment behind it of feeling like people were very interested and supportive. I thought that was really kind of the connecting piece for me, that I didn't have to try to prove anything to speak with you. So that was really helpful. It's a nice group. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Terry. Emmy, and then Cheryl.
Okay, thank you. Oh gosh, there was so much. Everybody had something to contribute that was useful for me. For instance, knowing your audience. I've heard that several different times. Also, the different techniques to handle people in the audience. Karen, you had a lot of suggestions of things that you could do to help with that. Mike, you had a lot of suggestions that I couldn't use, but you had many that I could. One of them, especially, was your attitude about maintaining your confidence, but also let them have the floor, let them hang themselves. That I really appreciated that. Mary, my goodness, I didn't know you went through such hard stuff. Remaining calm, maintaining your focus. Remember that you have the mic. I really liked that one. Remember that you have the mic. And don't worry about being polite enough. I mean, we've been hearing that all our lives, I have to be nice. Well, I guess I don't have to be that nice. So thank you for that, Mary. I could go on forever, but that's not the point. So,
Right. Cheryl and then Kyle.
So I was surprised at how much I could write down while I was timing. And I think I came pretty close on the timing. I don't think it is as important in this meeting tonight. The timing may be off a little bit, but I don't care because everything was good. You guys are all fantastic. But I wrote a lot of things down and repeated some of the things I wanted to say. The one that really stuck with me, that I think two of the panelists, maybe even another one, mentioned projecting your confidence. I really need to work on that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Obviously, in my head, I probably realized that, but I now realize how important it is to project your confidence, because that makes what you're saying and doing so different. And several had mentioned that. I wanted to tell Terry, because I don't know if I've ever talked to you before. And I wanted to let you know that you are a great storyteller. And I'm really happy you came and, to be here as a panelist. And I would suggest that you join because you're fantastic and you would get a lot out of our club. And so I'm just going to tell you, you need to join.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I think Mary asked, what was the book that you mentioned in your speech? Positive something?
Positive Discipline by Jane Nelson.
Thank you. And you said Jane Nelson?
Yeah. That's a win.
Great. Thank you. I wanted to remember that. Michael, you were fantastic. I love listening to you. I don't know if you've been here when I've been here before, or if you've been to Laugh Lab or not before, but I really loved listening to you. I could tell you are quite a comic, comedian. And I want to get comedy into my speaking more. But I really enjoyed listening to you. I liked a lot of what you said. One thing besides you talking about confidence, I also like know your audience and repeat what they said. Because I've always been told, don't repeat things. Well, I'm not repeating my things. I'm repeating what somebody else said. So I can do that. And Mary, one thing I got out from you was I like being direct. And that's when you were talking at the very beginning, you said the facilitator can tell them to shut up or something to that effect. And I kind of got that idea. Now I would want to be polite, but yeah, you're the facilitator. You have control of the whole room. So, and I think, Karen, you had this is one, and I didn't even think about this, even though I know it's been done. Use the chat to your advantage. So put a poll out there or ask a question, that kind of thing. And I know we do it in all our Zoom, our Toastmasters meetings a lot, but I guess you had to say it for it to get into my head. So
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm gonna move on. Sorry, because
yep,
we
no,
only have
that's-
like
that's
30
pretty
more
much it.
seconds for Kyle. There you go.
Okay. I will go quickly then. I am very happy with the diverse backgrounds of the 5 speakers. Different formats, different times, different backgrounds, different perspectives. I really appreciated that. I think there was a lot of commonality in the solutions, even if it was expressed differently. Michael, I really appreciated your directness, the don't suck. I think we should have a meeting on how not to suck. How to make your presentation suck less. I think we should title it that and see if maybe that will attract some of the guests.
Subtitle, no sucking allowed.
Mary, so I liked everything you had. I wanted you to take an extra 2 minutes and really give us a detailed example of predatory listening, because you've talked about it at a medium level, and I really need an example of some jerk who said this to, who replied to what you were doing in some way, so that I can go, oh, that's what that is. I'm sure someday I'll hear it and go, oh, I recognize what that is, but I can't pull it out of my memory. Terry, your story about detention and the kids in detention and the way you dealt with it and the way you listened was great. But it was a long walk to get there. You told us a lot of your history, school history, to get us there, and you could have included another story or two if you'd wanted, if you'd had less history. So, other than that, I'm very pleased with the way tonight worked out. So,
Right, wonderful, thank you. The best thing I ever did for my facilitation and Toastmaster speaking was to take an improv class, because I could finally get over myself. Well, although it terrified me so much, I can't even, it terrifies me to think about doing it again. And I know it would be just as good for me now. So thank you all. And that would be my final word. Kyle, love that you've done this, coordinated all of this. I wish we had a bigger audience for it. And that's on all of us club members. We need to promote our meetings better. And with that, I'm going to turn it to our president, Emmy. It is 8:30. So Emmy, take it away.
Okay. Time to, actually, it's time to shut up. And I would like to